For this video, we want to try to factor a trinomial where the leading coefficient is not 1. So let's try to factor this trinomial. Step number 1 is to make a table of factors for a and c. So in our case, we want to try to find the integer pair of factors for both 10 and 6. The integer factors for 10, we could do 1 times 10 or 2 times 5. The integer factors for 6, we could do 1 times 6 or 2 times 3. You can write these pairs in any order. I try to be systematic when I'm doing it, though. I want to try to develop a pattern if I can. Next, though, we have to reverse one column. It doesn't matter which column you reverse, so I usually will write a squiggly line under one of the columns and then reverse those factor pairs. Step number 2 is we have to determine, is it O plus I or O minus I? O stands for outside, I stands for inside. To decide which one it is, we want to look at the sign of C. In our case, C is positive 6, so we want O plus I. Step number 3, we actually have to evaluate O plus or minus I, and what we want to find is positive or negative B. In our case, we want negative 17. However, if we get positive 17, that would be okay also. We'd just adjust our signs. So in this case, because we're only dealing with positives, we're going to do positive 17. The O, again, is the product of the outside pair of numbers. I is the product of the inside pair of numbers. So when we evaluate, the outside pair is 1 and 6. So 1 times 6 plus 10 times 1. That happens to be 16. So that pair doesn't work. We'll move on to the next pair of factors. 1 times 3 is 3. 10 times 2 is 20. 3 plus 20 is 23. That pair doesn't work. Move on to the next pair. 2 times 6 is 12. 5 times 1 is 5. 12 plus 5 is 17. That's the right pair. Circle that pair of factors. Step number 4 says write those factors in the appropriate order. The first number in each binomial has to come from the first column. Also in this case, because we have an x squared, we're going to put an x with each one of these factors. So the first number in each binomial has to be in this order: 2x, 5x. The last number in each binomial has to come from the last column. So the last number has to be in the appropriate order. It'll go 1 and 6. We finally have to determine the sign for each binomial factor. We want to look at C, then at the sign of B. So in this case, C is positive, but B is negative. If C is positive, then both factors have to be positive or both have to be negative. So in this case, because B is negative, both of them are going to be minus. So this correct answer is going to be 2x minus 1 times 5x minus 6. We do need to keep in mind, though, is if C was negative, then 1 would be positive and 1 would be negative.